Good morning all of you. In last period we already started our first lesson, history, when, where and how. We have already discussed a lot of point. Now we discuss about the next point of the periodization. So the historical period we are going to study in this book is called the modern period. So we study about, so this period it is the modern period. So it began in Europe with coming of the industrial revolution. In Europe, that started the industrial revolution in 18th century. So it led to social and political changes because of this industrial revolution started in Europe. So there were a lot of changes related with the social and political changes became characteristic of modern period. However, in India the situation was somewhat different. India did not witness the scientific and industrial changes. Already that in England that started the industrial revolution, but in India that did not witness that, not understood about that the scientific and technological changes in industrial already started in England, but India not understood about such a type of the revolution. So in this period, to the extent that Europe did, and that industrial revolution that extends so much, this is because India become a supplier of raw materials. So India didn't understand about that the industrial revolution. So in India, when that the Britishers came in India, only the supplier of the raw material, because industrial revolution started in England, so only that the India supplying the raw material, serve a market for goods manufactured in the British factory. So such a type of the raw materials that provided to the British factories. So local Indian industries declined and received little attention from the colonial government, and that standard of living of the common people declined because of all these things, that the supplying of the raw material to the British factory. So the standard of the living of the common people totally declined. India became a colony being exploited by an impartial power. So only that India, that the Britishers came in India and established the colony, so they started exploited to all Indian people, and they imperialized whole India by their power. So therefore Indian historians refer to, so this Indian history that refer to, it is not the modern period. Britishers came in India and started the modern period, but this periodization, there were a lot of changes. Happened, and this period, it is not a modern period. This period, it is a period of that the colonial period. So modern period also called as a colonial period. So when that the Britishers came in India, they situated rule that giving the priority to establish their rule, that there were a lot of social and political changes. So mapping, it is a very important. Everyone knowing very well about the map. Map, it means showing the location. So one of the biggest tasks, okay, when the Britishers came in India, that rule all over the country. So how they ruled all over the country? They know that they knowing about the particular places. So through this mapping was mapping of the subcontinent. It is through this mapping, it was very easy to find out the different type of the subcontinent. So they felt need to conduct a survey which would help them administer the country more efficiently. So through this mapping, that they through this mapping system, they administered the country more efficiently. This led to the survey of India being set up Dehradun. So the vast expanse of our country was survived under initiative that the giving the main person giving the importance of the mapping, that is the name of that the Sir George Everest and William Lambton. Elaborate the survey maps and topographical sheets were prepared which showed the extent and that the different types of the that topological, it means that particular showing the point that the different types type of the flora and fauna, the different type of the towns and the city. So it was very helpful that time through this mapping which place is situated. So in geographical features of India, like as where is the mountain, where is the river, and that each and everything carefully surveyed and pointed on in that map. So mapping, it is a very important when that the Britisher came in India, and we also aware of our countries so many places in our country because of only the mapping. The next point is that the sources. So there are the different type of the sources. So study of the ancient, medieval India, there are numerous sources available. So modern Indian, different type of this is the modern Indian history. This include a very well textual, it means that the written sources, textual it means the written sources. In a written sources in textual it means the written, then the oral sources. In oral sources there are the buildings, museum and films and audios records in the period of the oral sources. And textual, it means the written sources, that each and everything in a written form, that is meant by the textual sources. So in a textual sources, the first point is a textual. Okay, see the textual sources. The first one is that the official record. What is meant by the official record? The English East India Company that maintained the meticulous written record. That meticulous, it means that the careful attention. Meticulous, it means the careful attention. So the different type of the written records, all of dealing. So did the latter official of the British Crown. So different type of the records they maintained by the Britishers. That official record maintained by the Britishers, it was really very helpful. The hints, source material range from archival material in the form of the documents. So the different type of the documents they made in the form of, that is called the different type of the official records, and that converted into the document. So different order, bills, laws and acts to books and manuscripts. So these were that maintained by the Britishers. This is called the official record, and that is in the textual sources. That second word is it was very important in that the British era, that is the newspaper and the press clipping. Newspaper, everyone knowing that we get it a lot of information, and the press clipping. So the historical importance of the press in the era is two-dimensional. So the period of that written sources, that the newspaper, it was a very important role. It played a pivotal role. Pivotal, it means that the very important role in the national movement. Secondly, it is invaluable sources for reconstructing the events of the period. Newspaper in English, the different type of the newspaper, the different type of the language. So first newspaper, that is the first newspaper published in that language, Bengal Gazette was the first English newspaper. Bengal Gazette was the first English newspaper, and that in that newspaper in English and other vernacular language, it means that the local language. So the different newspaper that published in that the different languages. So first paper that the published, that the Bengal Gazette, first English newspaper published India was the Bengal Gazette. It was published by an Irishman. So this paper was published, the Bengal Gazette was published by the Irishman called James Augustus Hackey. The name of that person, the name of that person who was published the Bengal Gazette, that the James August Hackey. It was weekly newspaper. So this paper was a weekly newspaper. The vernacular languages newspaper were powerful tool. So the different type of vernacular language, I already told you the local languages. There were a lot of people living in India, so the different type of the languages that talking the different type of the people. So giving the priority of the local languages. So it was a powerful tool to mobilize national sentiment, because through the newspaper, again that the different type of language, the people aware about what happened inside the India. So the aware of the sentiment, aware of the emotion of the Indian people, that echoed strong anti-British view, that each and everything that most of the vernacular newspaper that written against of the Britishers, so that the awaken of the national sentiments of the Indian people. So different type of the photographs, cartoons, satirical composition reflects the public opinions regarding the British rule. So newspaper, it is a very important important thing in the sources, in the textual sources. Then ideology, the next is the ideology. What is meant by the Indology? Indology, it means the study of the Indian culture was field that attracted the number of European scholars. Britishers came in India, not only the Britishers but the lot of European countries came in India and situated their rule. So there were a lot of European scholars studied about the Indian history. There were a lot of European scholars studied about the Indian history, the different type of languages. So that is called the Indologists. They were known as the Indologists. It means that they studied about the Indian history through the different type of the languages, giving the priority of the Arabian, Persian, such a type of the language that the European scholars came and studied about, and that's why they were called the Indologists. So the works of the prominent Indologists, the name of the prominent important Indologists, the name of the James Mill, Mount Stuart, Elphinstone, Vincent Smith, Max Muller were influential. They examined when they studied about the Indian history, they examined each and everything, each and every point of view of the Indian history, and they had written a different type of books that related with the Indian history. So that's why we are saying that the Indologists. So they hope that a better understanding of the Indian custom, so that all Europeans came and they studied about the Indian culture and Indian custom would help them to rule India more effectively, because not only that the European, when they written about the lot of books that the Indian culture, Indian custom, so it was very helpful for the Britishers to understand the history of the India. So it is very important work done by the Indologists. Then next one is the popular literature. Popular literature, it is related with the popular literature. It is related it was related with our Indian people. So see, so as a response to colonial persecution of Indian writers, so in a popular literature, so Indian writers and the scholars, especially Indian writers and scholars, attempted to rediscover their nation's past. So in our especially Indian scholars or Indian writers, now that the giving the priority, the importance of the nation's part, जो भी past में हुआ है हमारे history में, so they giving the priority, giving the importance of the nation past. So they were written, our Indian writers, Indian scholar, like that Indologists. Okay, the Indologists mean that they related with the European scholar, but that our Indian writer or Indian scholar that written about that the Indian past history. So the famous Bengali novelist Bankim Chandra Chatterjee remarked, we must have our own history. So he was saying that we must have known each and everything, knowing about our history, and towards towards this end, there was an attempt to document and collect historical sources because of the Indian scholars and Indian writers. So national literature criticizing British policy. So such a type of that the Indian scholars or Indian writers that each and everything criticize that the British writing, those who were written about the Indian culture. So it's they giving the priority of that the nationalist literature, that is called the nationalist literature. It means that written by our Indian writer or Indian scholar. So that is called the nationalist literature. Through this nationalist literature, they criticize British officers, such as Dadabhai Naoroji, that written a book of the poverty and un-British rule in India. The book written by the Mahatma Gandhi ji, that is Hind Swaraj, and the Jawaharlal Nehru, that the discovery of India. Through this book, they awaken the sentiment of our Indians. In attention and outpouring the novels and the stories, particularly in vernacular language. I already told you that giving the priority of the vernacular language, it means the local language, that our Indian people aware of our past history through this local language. Bankim Chandra Chatterjee, that written the book of Anand Math, and Dinabandhu Mitras, that written the book of the Nil Darpan, expressed the growing sentiment against of the British rule. So this is our Indian scholar or Indian writer through this nationalist historiography or through this nationalist literature, that awakening the sentiments and emotion of our Indian people. Not only that the male, these we are like that the Bankim Chandra Chatterjee or that the Dinabandhu Mitras, they were all, that is the male, but not only the male but also female, giving a lot of contribution. The book written by different type of the books written by our female candidates like Rasa Sundari Devi, who learned how to read in the secrecy of her kitchen. So wrote an autobiography called Amar Jiban. So Rasa Sundari Devi, that written an autobiography that the whole day, how that the female, that the whole day spent in the kitchen. So she was written a book of the Amar Jiban in Bengali, which was published in 1876. Then next one is the Kailash Bashini Devi, Pandita Ramabai, Rokia Hussain, portrait of women and their experience. Sarojini Naidu, that everyone knowing about the Sarojini Naidu, was called the Nightingale of India through this beautiful writing, the different type of through this writing, that the book, it's related with that the poetry. So we are saying the Nightingale, Sarojini Naidu was called the Nightingale of India for her poetry and writing. So this is the totally different type of the literature we are discussing today. So across many accounts related the social problem that time, such as casteism, exploitation, sati, child marriages. There were a lot of problem when that the Britishers came in India, and they were trying to that political and social changes. So through the writing of the different writers, Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar, Jyotirao Phule, Ramaswamy Naikar, deal with such a issue. So Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar, Raja Ram Mohan Rai, Keshav Chandra Sen, and Devendranath Tagore wrote extensively on a need for a social reform. Through this writing, it means these were the popular literature, the different type of the Indian scholars and writers that giving the importance of our Indian history. Then after that, oral sources we have already seen about the textual sources and the different type of the writers and scholars, Indologies, through their writing that telling each and everything about related the Indian history. So these each and everything that related with the written work. Now we see the oral sources. Next one is the oral sources. like that written sources or textual, it means the in written form. And what about the oral sources? Oral sources, it means only that is in a oral form, that not in a written form, that is meant by the oral. So in a oral form, that different type of the folk tale, folk song, okay, not in a written form, that orally that telling by the Indian people in the past. So audio recordings, music, folk song, interviews and recollection of the prominent personalities as well as the common people. So each and everything in a that the a lot of collection, but in the oral form. So that is called, this is called the oral sources. So different type of the songs and poem composed during the revolt. So revolt of 1857. So such a time, in that time they are not situated the written things, the not written things in that period. So that each and everything that is in a oral form. So the partition of Bengal and the Swadeshi boycott movement tell us about the mood of the time. So these sources capture the sentiments. So it is very important. It was oral sources that time. It was really important. Like that the written sources. In oral sources, like voices of the common people, they come together and there was a formation of the Indian people. So perspective on the national struggle through the eyes of the common people have been gained from a song, poems, newspapers, stories and interviews belonging to this period. It just like that the written sources, it was so much important, like that the oral sources also important source of that the in Indian history. Then next one is that the buildings and the museum. What about the buildings and museum? It's related with the oral sources. How that buildings and museums connected with the oral sources? So the in a buildings and museums, that the national, first one is the National Archives of India. What is meant by the archives? Archives, it means the collection, a lot of collection. So in the what type of the collection? So see the National Archives of India in New Delhi, the National Archives. I already told you that archives, it means the collection, the different type of the collection of the things that related with our past in Indian history. So that's situated in New Delhi. A treasure trove. Treasure trove, it means that related to it just like a wealth. Our archives, it just like a wealth of information for the history of this period. It contains materials such as private papers. So I already told you that the different type of the collection, that the collection of that private papers of the governor generals in that time, that they maintain it. So that collection of collection in the National Archives of India. Then another thing is the proceeding of the Indian National Congress, writing, speeches of national leaders, diaries, generals and official record. Each and everything collected in that National Archives of India, that's situated in the Delhi. Each and every record maintained in that archives. So the record of the archives are kept of series dating from, so each and everything that maintained date wise, that the mid from 18th century. So we aware about the period of the 18th century through this collection. So it is very important. Documents in the different type of the languages like English language, Arabian language, Persian language, Urdu, Sanskrit. So the each and everything available in mid 18th century. So such a type of the collection available in that in the archives of India. The next one is that the National Museum of India. What is meant by the National Museum? It means a lot of things. It is also the different type of the collection in that museum. So what type of the collection? Already situated the National Museum of India, already situated in Delhi. The National Museum of India has in possession over 2 lakh works of art spanning the 5,000 years of the nation's history. So there were the possession over the 2 lakh works. How many? There were the 2 lakh works of the art spanning the period of that the 5,000 years history. So there were a collection of the 2 lakh of things that related Indian history, that the 5,000 years of the nation's history. So such a type of the collection, it was huge collection, the National Museum of India. Through this through this collection we aware each and everything. We are connecting with the past history very easily. The different type of the coins, that the paintings, that the manuscript it's related with the Samrat Ashok, like a Sarnath pillar. Okay, so there were a lot of things that written on that the Sarnath pillar. So such a type of the different type of the documents that the related with the our past events, and that also statues, that a different type of the statue, folios. So inaugurated in 1949, that National Museum Museum of India inaugurated in 1949, because it is really very important, because National Museum of India that connected with our Indian history with past events. It's richly stocked library. There are a huge library that contains a different periodical, journal, the different type of the publication which form a good source of information. If you go sometime, if you will go in Delhi, so such a type of the National Archives of India, National Museum of India, so I everyone to urge it to visit such a type of the things, because these things like that aware of the sentiments, we connecting with our the past event. भले हमने we are not seeing the Shivaji Maharaj, we are not seeing the British document. So if we visit that the National Archives of India or the National Museum of India, so we aware all these such a type of the things. So the last one is that the films and audio records. How that time that the films and audio records it is important. See that audio recordings, moving motion pictures, video recording, documenting events, films and documentaries also form of valuable sources of modern history. So films, through a small film, a documentary, it means a very short films that related, for example, of the Mahatma Gandhi ji Dandi Satyagraha. It was making a very short film. We totally because of these short films we aware about the Gandhiji's Dandi Satyagraha. If that time someone is not taking the picture, so totally we unaware about all these things. So through this short film, through this documentary, we aware, we knowing about the face of how that looking like Mahatma Gandhi ji, how that the looking like a Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, because a lot of things captured it that time. Source of modern India history, speeches of the freedom fighters and films footage provide us vivid information directly from those times. So that time those who were taking the pictures, nowadays we aware about all these things. So we can see that last 2.5 centuries of India's history is a complex, fascinating period. So it's really very amazing and fascination period of that the lesson number first of the when, where and how. It is really very fascinating. And this period needs to be examined. It is very important we examine each and everything from various angles and from the different point of views. This will form our approach that how that they rule establish all over the India, and how they expand their empire in point of view of the Britishers. So everyone knowing about very well. So when, where and how. So I hope everyone understood the lesson very well. Thank you everyone.